Hello everybody, my name is Griffin, talking to you guys from Rishi Outpost, and today I'm making this video from a place of sadness. It's not something that I like to do a lot, and it's not something that I plan on making a habit of, but the goal of this channel is for me to put my honest views on Star Wars out there for you guys, and unfortunately I cannot do that without talking about why I'm just not very excited for the Rise of Skywalker. I really have tried to muster up excitement for this movie. I've analyzed the new trailer, and I've read or am currently reading all of the Journey to the Rise of Skywalker books and comics, but when I got a notification on my phone the other day that another TV spot teaser had been released for the movie and I felt nothing, and then I watched it and still felt nothing, I realized it was time to make this video. First of all, I want to make it clear that I'm not the kind of Star Wars fan who just hates everything that Star Wars has released since it was bought by Disney. In fact, I really enjoyed Rogue One, as well as many of the books and comics that have been released in the last 5 years. Recently in particular, I've really enjoyed watching The Mandalorian and playing the game Jedi Fallen Order. And while I do have massive problems with some of the decisions that have been made with the franchise since the Disney purchase, I'm still really enjoying Star Wars overall outside of the sequel trilogy. I would say that outside of the sequel trilogy, I'd grade the new content we've gotten in the canon so far is like a solid B to B+. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. A key factor for why I'm not excited for The Rise of Skywalker is because the previous two so-called Skywalker saga films have been such massive disappointments to me. Admittedly, I enjoyed The Force Awakens quite a bit when it was first released. I think it does a good job of capturing the feel of the original trilogy, while at the same time hinting at some intriguing mysteries and concepts that could be expanded upon in the future, and could be speculated on by fans for a long time. However, it took so few risks and added so little to the universe and story as a whole that, in my view, J.J. Abrams essentially punted the story and counted on Rian Johnson to actually continue it in the next movie. This left Rian Johnson with the enormous pressure of providing satisfying answers to the questions posed in The Force Awakens, while also making The Last Jedi a continuation of the story and good film in its own right. Oh, and also J.J. Abrams didn't leave Rian Johnson with any plans on things like Rey's origins, Snoke's motivations, or the reasoning for Luke's exile. Rian Johnson had to make it all up himself. Johnson then chose to address or fail to address these concepts in a way that sought to subvert expectations or divide fans, rather than to tell a good story with compelling characters. And unfortunately, The Last Jedi handled all of the intriguing parts of The Force Awakens in a way that was so dissatisfying to me that it really just left me feeling empty. There isn't anything left to be excited for. I came into this trilogy excited for so many things. I couldn't wait to see the original trilogy characters again. I couldn't wait to see a third generation of Skywalkers and second generation of Solos find their way in the galaxy, going on new adventures and overcoming new challenges. I couldn't wait to see the New Republic and the New Jedi Order in action, getting to see what Luke, Leia, and Han had fought so hard for in the original trilogy to be a reality. But after the first two movies of this new trilogy, what is left to even be invested in? Han and Luke have been killed, and Leia's role will be limited due to Carrie Fisher's heartbreaking passing. I'm trying to remain optimistic, but I'm skeptical of J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio's ability to get Leia into this movie in a way that feels natural. I'm also skeptical of Luke Skywalker's presence being a good thing for this film, after how poorly he was handled in the previous two. The original hero's one remaining offspring, Kylo Ren's story, is almost guaranteed to end with him sacrificing himself the exact same way as Vader in Return of the Jedi. And while this made for a great story for that movie, and might make for an okay story in this movie, I can't really get myself that excited for it, as I really have no reason to cheer for his redemption. The new heroes, Rey, Poe, Finn, and Rose, are all fine, I guess, but The Last Jedi didn't get me really invested in any of them very much. Rey in particular is just so boring to watch. We never feel like she's in any real danger, or has to try very hard to succeed. Poe and Finn are pretty fun to watch actually, but I can't say I'm dying to know what's going to happen to them in the next movie. And the New Republic and New Jedi Order are distant memories at this point, and they were nothing but wasted potential. Even the interesting new concepts which were introduced in The Force Awakens, like Snoke, Rey's origins, and the Knights of Ren, have disappointed me, or seem likely to disappoint me. So they're bringing back as many old favorites as possible: Lando, Wedge, even Palpatine. I wouldn't even be surprised to see the Force ghosts of some or all of the Jedi we know maintained their consciousness after death. But with there being just one movie to bring all of these characters back into the story, as well as work as its own movie, which J.J. Abrams is still insisting it should for some reason, despite this movie supposedly being Episode 9, I'm really not convinced that they'll pull off a masterpiece with this film. Well, that's the main case for why I'm not very excited for The Rise of Skywalker. There are other major reasons that contribute to my feelings as well. The fact that Bob Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, and company chose to reject George Lucas's ideas for the sequel trilogy is such a disappointment to me. The Skywalker saga is Lucas's story, and going directly against his wishes was just so arrogant and misguided of those people, in my opinion. I know Lucas has some really out there ideas, but why not work with them and try to make them better rather than just throwing them out? It's shocking to me that they chose to listen to J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson's ideas for the story rather than keeping Lucas on board as a trusted consultant. Additionally, the fact that there was no overarching plan for the sequel trilogy is crazy to me, despite the fact that multiple writers and directors were determining where the story was going. While Lucas didn't have everything laid out in exact detail from the beginning, he oversaw all 6 films, and they followed his vision for a coherent story. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi feel tangibly different, and it is very obvious to me that there was no plan for the story that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were both following. The story should have been planned out in broad strokes from the beginning, as this trilogy was too important to let random directors just wing it. Finally, the decision that turned me off the most in the first 2 movies of this trilogy was to make Rey related to nobody. I don't have an issue with the theme of greatness coming from humble beginnings. Han Solo is the perfect example of a great character who already existed and embodied coming from nothing. The idea that Rey not being related to anybody was groundbreaking for someone who is Force sensitive, when in the prequel trilogy we saw 10,000 Jedi who almost all came from pretty average backgrounds, is very silly. The problem is, Rey is now the main character of the sequel trilogy of the Skywalker saga, and yet she is not a Skywalker. To me, this is so obvious as to be a comically bad decision. Obviously, the main character in the Skywalker saga should be a Skywalker. The fact that the main character, Rey, isn't a Skywalker and is still the main character, combined with the fact that the plans George Lucas had for the sequel trilogy are not being followed, lead me to view The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker as not even really being a part of the saga. They're just their own trilogy that exists in the same universe and is J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson's story, not the continuation of the 6 films of the original saga created by George Lucas. All of that being said, a small part of me is still excited for this movie. I genuinely want to be excited, but I just don't feel like the saga is being continued in a way that stays true to its roots. I hope that I'm wrong about The Rise of Skywalker. I hope it's an amazing movie that is not only good in its own right, but gives real meaning to the other 2 movies in the sequel trilogy and really makes them feel like a part of the Skywalker saga, and that it was worth continuing the saga after the perfect ending of Return of the Jedi. I hope it finds a way to endear Rey, Poe, Finn, and Rose to me in the same way that Luke, Anakin, Ahsoka, and so many other characters have been endeared to me over the years. I hope that the movie puts all of the legacy characters it's including to great use, and that it ultimately ends the Skywalker saga in a truly satisfying way. I just don't really see that happening. It's simply too much to ask of any one film, especially from a film headed by J.J. Abrams, who couldn't even so much as give us a truly original story in The Force Awakens, let alone give us an original story that also does everything else that The Rise of Skywalker needs to do. And if I'm wrong and the movie is great, I'll be the first to admit I'm wrong. In fact, I'd be thrilled to be wrong about this, but we'll just have to wait and see. While I am pessimistic about The Rise of Skywalker, I'm still quite optimistic about the rest of the franchise. With the launch of Disney Plus, we are entering the era of live-action Star Wars shows, and if the first few episodes of The Mandalorian are a good indication, it will be a goldmine of great Star Wars stories in the future. Marvel Comics is poised to reboot its main Star Wars lines to the period of time between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, where I think there is a ton of story potential to be had. Jedi Fallen Order proved that great Star Wars games are still possible, and I'm hopeful to see more of them in the future. Del Rey has teased a big series titled Project Luminous, which I'm extremely curious about and excited for. And in the slightly less immediate future, we will get more Star Wars movies. And despite the sequel trilogy, I am hopeful that the next time around they will get it right. Benioff and Weiss are out of the way, and I suspect that Rian Johnson will soon follow. I'm very hopeful that whoever works on the next series of Star Wars films, whenever they come, will do their best to get it right. I'm sorry that this video was kind of a downer, and to our viewers who have been enjoying the sequel trilogy thus far, thank you for making it to this point in the video. I respect everyone's opinions about Star Wars, and if you do love the sequel trilogy, I'm very happy for you. I wish I loved it too. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether or not you're looking forward to the Rise of Skywalker and why, though I ask that you all please keep it respectful down there, as this is a subject we are all very passionate about and we do not all agree upon. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to this channel for more Star Wars content. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.
Do we take prisoners?
I don't.